All right. So welcome to the Arizona Blockathon.us event on Saturday, April the 28th, 2018. This is, the way this is going to work is we're going to have some talks in the morning, and then towards the end of the morning, around 11:30 or so, we'll break into teams, and the teams can go to lunch. You'll have a small assignment, and then come back and we'll talk about a bigger assignment, which is not really an assignment, but it's basically just a very, very simple set of criteria to complete the day. And then we'll have presentations at 4 o'clock this afternoon. We are going to invite other people to join us at 4 o'clock for the presentations, and we'll see how this goes. So number one is you don't have to know anything about blockchain in order to participate today. The only thing we request is that you have at least 1 year of software development experience, just so you know something about the tool sets, and something about coding, something about how to do a little HTML, CSS, so forth. So that's the only thing we request. Other than that, it's completely open. I think we've got an awesome group of people that have signed up for this. And overall, our real mission in today and throughout the Desert Blockchain is to connect people in Phoenix and in Arizona that are interested. Hey, good morning, welcome. Connect people in Arizona that can start to collaborate on the technical side of things. We have an awesome group of policymakers that are really interested in putting Arizona at the forefront of this whole realm of fintech and blockchain. And now, we also have a very robust community of software developers. However, at least from my view, the amount of people in Phoenix that know something about blockchain is still very, very new. So the intention of this event is to introduce people to one another that have some technical skill. Good morning. And so we can start to collaborate and share. Now, along those lines, we do have a Slack channel that if you participate in today's event, or if you participated in the first one, which was February the 3rd, you are welcome to join that Slack channel. And we have a session every Monday afternoon from 5:30 to 6, where we have some really awesome people like Julian and Jason who get on and start to talk about some of the new developments in blockchain and Ethereum, in zero-knowledge proofs, and basically the whole realm, so that we can get the conversation going in Phoenix and, again, continue to build our technical community here today. So we have 3 objectives today. Number 1 is to learn, number 2 is to share, and number 3 is to build. And that's what we're out to accomplish today. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. So does anybody have any questions about how the day is going to go and what's available and so forth? Okay, cool. So we're going to take about from 9:30 to 10, and we're going to talk about some general areas of blockchain. And in particular, we're going to talk about a use case that Matt Oxendale has created around creating a automobile title registry using blockchain technology. Now, nobody has to work on that or do anything with it today. We're just looking at it as a use case that might be interesting to experiment with. And it could use cryptocurrency. Jason's going to be talking about a platform that he's involved with called CryptoPal today. And Justin is here as well, who works with CryptoPal. So we'll have at least a 30-minute session around that. but we thought it would be valuable to come up with use cases that the teams and this technical community can kind of work on if you so choose. And Matt his family is in the automobile dealership business in Northern Arizona, has multiple automobile dealerships in Northern Arizona, and he's run into the day-to-day issues around automobile titles. So he posted, if you're interested, and don't go there now because you should be listening to me, but he posted on the meetup a link to a write-up on the use case, and we'll be going over that a little bit later. So that's pretty much the start of it. How many people here have experience with blockchain doing some sort of development? Awesome. Would everybody be cool if we just kind of went around the room and introduced ourselves and what you're interested in, what you'd like to get out of today? That way we can kind of get to know one another. And by the way, this is being recorded, and also whatever's created today, at least as a group, is intended to be open source under MIT license. So, so let's just go around the room and introduce one another, or introduce yourself, what you're interested in getting out of today, what your experience is with blockchain. If you have no experience with blockchain, that's fine. But why don't we start with that? Okay. So hang on a second, Julian. Let me switch the camera angle, and we will start with you. And also, if you participated in the first Arizona Blockathon, that would be useful as well. So go ahead, Julian.
I'm Julian. I'm, I guess, the lead developer of Tunnel, bringing the Zcash kind of technology to the Ethereum network for all the ERC20 tokens. I was a captain on the last Blockathon, and I'm here to just help grow the community some more. So we need more developers.
They did a really cool project, which, if you go back to the February 3rd event, it was called Dam Chain, which was a digital asset management chain. It was on the Ethereum blockchain, right? And you guys actually had working code by the end of the day.
Wrote a Solidity contract.
Yep, wrote a Solidity contract, and I think a lot could be done with that. I think that has a lot of potential. So, cool. Bill.
Yeah, I'm Bill Maher. I was also at the last hackathon. What I am interested in currently is trying to come up with basically an automated makerspace. Is there a way you can start a makerspace with one piece of equipment and end up being a collective, and make it so that your workspace is pretty much automated, so all the admin, all the rest of the stuff, and then you can then take your stuff and go to another workspace or another project, so we'll know like what the hell you know, as opposed to just bragging and making sort of stories. So that's basically what I do. And I'm thinking of building it more like the guild system. That's more of a global guild system, if there is such a thing. All right, thanks.
Cool. And Bill is also very active in the IoT space. He runs some of the largest maker meetups and so forth. You mind telling everybody what you're...
Oh yeah, since I'm a sort of semi-retired engineer and lifetime learner, I actually help I'm actually an organizer of Makers of Phoenix. I just got like 3,000, just passed 3,000 members the other day.
Not really.
Which is nothing compared to all the social stuff, right? But anyway, so what I try to do is we're looking around in the area. I have a big map of all the resources for makers all around town. A lot of secret stuff I don't put on the map, but I keep finding out about things. You know, yesterday I went to a place where a guy actually cuts diamonds and rubies, and I'm going to make a ring with him that's 3D printed that's got an LED on the bottom, stuff like that. And then the other thing I do is virtual reality of Arizona. where we, you can just imagine all the stuff that goes with that. And I just started a thing called ambient computing, which is how you go about taking the computer out of the picture, where you just talk to it. And the building is the computer. Right? So, anyhow. Okay.
And do you have any meetups coming up, Bill, that you'd like to mention? Or?
Oh, I forgot what they were now. Well, we had a whole bunch. I'm about to go to eye surgery, so I haven't scheduled too much. But I don't remember what they are now.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, cool. All right. Sorry, I'm might be distracting you for a moment here. Queuing up a video. Okay, James.
I'm James. What I want to get out of blockchain, I just want to learn more about it. I did some research 2 weeks ago, and it seemed pretty interesting. Saw the technology behind it. No experience with blockchain, but I have about 3 years of Java experience under my belt. So I got background from there.
Cool. And what would you like to get out of today, James?
Oh, for today? Just to refine my knowledge, really. Because, like I said, just the cursory information I've lost.
Awesome. All right. Justin.
Hi, I'm Justin. I've been a blockchain Solidity smart contract coder for about a year now. I work with CryptoPal, and today I'm just really looking to meet some other people and try and refine my knowledge as well.
Cool.
I'm Jason. I have been in the blockchain space in some way since 2010. Associated with a couple different blockchain startups. One out in Seattle called Nori. I was just out there doing their kind of soft launch event. Just got back in last night. And then I'm also associated with a startup here called CryptoPal, in which I'm the CTO for that one. And we do things such as like providing APIs and SDKs for people wanting to integrate their applications with blockchain functionalities. In fact, I'll be doing some shorter tutorials in a little bit later in the showing some of how to use some of the CryptoPal APIs and SDKs, as well as providing some full nodes for everybody to deploy their contracts to if they're wanting to use Ethereum for any of their hacking. So, thanks.
Cool. And Jason is also the co-organizer of Desert Blockchain. So, and I'm going to step out for just a moment.
Good morning. My name is Zach Watts. I'm brand new to blockchain, so I'm still very much getting up to speed on all of this. I'm with ITS. We are a nose-to-tail supply chain partner in the aviation industry. So we buy and sell airplane stuff, and I'm hoping to find ways to apply blockchain to that traceability problem. Thank you.
My name is Destry Saul. I'm a blockchain engineer, I guess, at a company called Unchained Capital based out of Austin. Just mostly here to meet people and do something.
Matt Oxendale, Jay mentioned earlier, have a few car dealerships up north. Might be the only one in the room not a developer. I won't be participating in that portion today, but I'm here to talk about the motor vehicle title use case, and particularly interested in how we can use blockchain in real life applications with businesses, with social cases like this, the title use case for the state of Arizona.
My name is Deshaun Hawkins. Most people know me as DJ. I'm a graduate of the first cohort from Galvanize. So I'm a full stack junior level JavaScript developer, front end and back end. I've been just following the technology. I've been really just basically just on the sidelines, just kind of just in awe and shock, of the amazing things that can be done with decentralized applications. I work with I have my own company, just a small startup. We just kind of just do full scale digital agency kind of stuff, but we're actually doing a lot of of talks with local community members here about being able to inform the public about the importance of their data, and then, and being able to, actually containerize that data for themselves, and in some ways even monetize it in some respects. We overall just are trying to create more sort of awareness. And so I'm just trying to really learn more so about how, like the ins and outs. I have a general overview, and I'm kind of playing around with solidity and stuff like that, and kind of trying to, develop on my own. But I'm really trying to really like solidify my skills personally, and be able to reflect it to other individuals that are around me.
Hey, I'm Santosh. I'm basically a Java developer, as a big data engineer. I'm just here to learn blockchain.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what would you like to get out of today?
So maybe learn how to write smart contracts and solidity and stuff. Get an idea of how to do it.
Awesome.
I'm Jeremy, and I have a little bit of dabbled around, some Ethereum stuff, Solidity. Just kind of started doing that. I'm just interested in the technology, and came out to some of these events and decided to try this hack. I want to meet some people and maybe learn a little bit more. That's about it.
Cool. Tom, go ahead.
All right. Well, my name is Tom Branson, and I'm pretty much new to the software engineering or software development world. My wife and I are selling businesses that we've owned for the last 15 years, so I can concentrate on this. So I'm in between jobs, I guess you'd say. I'm working on my my graduate degree in software development at DePaul University. So I'm kind of here to meet, and I've sort of been a fan of blockchain for a couple of years, and as I'm getting into the software developing area for the past year, I've pretty much tried to disassemble a lot of the source codes out there because I kind of want to concentrate on data structures and fascinated about that. How are things put in state? How are things best? How can you get things as fast and efficiently and scaled as possible? Those are interesting questions that I like to look into. But anyways, so eventually I'll be looking for a job, and so if anybody's hiring, just let me know. But it's going to be good to meet you and learn as much as possible I can from everybody that's in this room.
Cool. Michael?
I'm Michael. Been into cryptocurrencies since probably 2013. I started a software contracting company, and I've been doing dApp development for about 6 months now. And I'm just here to see, meet some of the community in Arizona and see what else is doing this and have a good time.
Cool. Okay. Yeah.
Well, my name is Zach Haddad, and I am branding myself on Twitter, Zach Haddad 2, as a blockchain expert, basically. I have a IT background for a long time, but I've mostly been an entrepreneur in small businesses. I've also been in real estate for a while. I've done well, and I've also lost in real estate. And I'm here to basically break into blockchain on the business side. I've done like a 5-year stint at a payment technology company as a software trainer and a software basically pre-sales engineer type job in a POS software company called Comcash out of Irvine, California. So I'm very highly interested. That's what caught my attention first time, hearing about Bitcoin. So I'm very, very interested in that payment, remittances and payments, basically the first use case of blockchain. I'm trying to do a master node for a chain called Graft, which is trying to be a catch-all in the industry. Highly interested in ethos, doing all that stuff. I'm also doing on the investment side. I'm helping a couple of people. I'm doing my own small investment. I run a couple of bots for crypto crypto bots, trading bots. So I know a lot about that side of things as well, so.
Cool.
That's about it.
Thanks, Zach. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sandeep Shukla. I'm an enterprise architect with a healthcare company. I've been reading about blockchain quite a lot. But only thing is like how to put this in a real perspective, from use case perspective. It's not that clear in my mind. So we deal with providers and those kind of things. So I'm looking for like opportunities or use cases as what we will go through. And how can I apply this, irrespective of what cryptocurrency it is, right? How can I apply blockchain within the organization that can cut the middleman out, as to say, right? That's what I want to get from today's this block.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Joseph.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joseph Ferrillo. I came to the last blockathon last time. I've been in cryptocurrency since about like August last year. I've just been really trying to learn as much coding as possible. I learned Python, and then I started looking into JavaScript, some HTML, CSS. I've been learning Solidity recently. I really just want to become like a full-fledged freelance developer and just make my own apps. Make them free, because that's kind of really what I feel like the point of decentralization is, something that everyone can interact with and not really pay a high price. I mean, why make an app that costs money when it's all open source and someone else is going to copy my code? They just chop out the feed and they're just going to be bigger and I'm going to get no credit for it. So what I really hope to learn today is getting more functionality out of understanding how an ERC 721 coin works on Ethereum. And so that way I can make unique tokens. And I kind of really like Matt's idea about doing title transfer ownership on a blockchain. And I really feel like that's kind of like the key towards it. And that's really just kind of what I look forward to today, is kind of messing with that and getting into that.
Cool. Thanks, Joseph. And before we go any further at all, I would like to announce that you are qualified to be at this event if you wear a Rick and Morty t-shirt. That's a universal qualification. All right, so cool. So let's talk about the use case a little bit that Matt has come up with. And we did a whole session on this, last Wednesday? And so we're not going to go over a lot of that, but I think it would be helpful. Well, first of all, does anybody have any questions after we kind of introduced ourselves, or anything you'd like to say? Yes, Deshaun.
Maybe I wasn't ambiguous with what my purpose was. Just wanted to be clear that I'm actually a freelancer, and I'm looking to learn more of my thing, build my development skills. But at the same time, I'm looking for more things that are like philanthropic, and for social change. So that's kind of where I'm at. So like a lot of the things that I see that are out there, I'm trying to actually help contribute to them, because I think that it helps build an ecosystem in a more dynamic way. I love what you brought about your purpose and what your mission is. And so I'm I'm just learning from the masters and trying to kind of get in and see where I can fit in, and how I can help contribute in any way possible.
Cool. Are you involved with any nonprofits or social causes at this point yet, or you're looking?
I'm not involved in any. When we're trying to get more to the things market as far as education. As far as we're targeting youth that are disenfranchised or impoverished from ages 9 to 19, to be able to get them to understand more about just technology as a whole, and being eventually with the purpose of getting to the point of understanding the blockchain and how it affects them and all the different parts and moving parts of it. But actually being able to matriculate more complex technical information to the masses, in a way that they can actually easily disseminate it.
Cool. So for anybody that's interested in working with youth and education, I highly recommend that before the day's over, you talk to Eileen Kane, who greeted you as you came in. She's very active in the Arizona SciTech Festival. And welcome. And she's also very active in the whole educational realm. The other person who's going to be here is Elio Grieco, and he's very involved with Code Day, which is like a hacking event for youth. And anyway, so I think one of the dimensions that we could really create is introducing some of the younger people to this whole realm, because there's a lot of excitement about cryptocurrency. It seems to be among the youth. And now this could introduce broader use cases for them. So, Marjan, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Would you like to introduce yourself and what you'd like to get out of today?
So, yeah, I've been involved, like I'm an electronic engineer, and I've been with data mining, AI for back in Denmark, and then I started working with IoT. And then when I came here, I knew a little bit about blockchain, but I see a very big potential in blockchain. I was here last time, and I'm launching a project, and what I'm looking for today, looking for people who are interested to work with me. I have possibility to apply for some grants, and so I would like to know more about you, and if we can have a chat, and I can tell you more about the vision I have with the blockchain. Yeah, that's what I really have.
You want to talk a little bit about the project that you worked with and the team you worked with from February 3rd, the first ArizonaBlockathon.us?
Yeah, so last time it was one of the applications I switched possible with blockchain, which was with healthcare. And last time what we launched was so you could get reward if you do activity and have a healthy living. That was a prototype that we launched last time. But after I left, I saw much more potential to see really developing platform that, like in the front end for the user, they don't really not required to know much about blockchain, but they can use or benefit from blockchain. So it can go from a smart ledger or a smart contract, and also something like when we give benefit to people through cryptocurrency. That's
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Anything else?
You also have a PhD, right?
No, actually, I started my PhD on that. I decided not to finish it, and I saw so much potential in blockchain, and like I want to be in this. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. All right. So let's take a look at a video that I think highlights what's possible with the use case that Matt has proposed around automobile titles. So bear with me a moment while we screen share. And we will play this video, which is about 3 minutes long. Oops. Sorry. Let's go back.
And sharing of all types of information. It is said to have a significant impact on several government operations. One area in which blockchain is a technology that enables the secure recording, management, and sharing of all types of information. It is said to have a significant impact on several government operations. One area in which the greatest potential gains have been identified is the registration process for property, such as motor vehicles. The process of buying a vehicle today is complex and time-consuming. The same data is input multiple times into separate systems used by auto dealers, lenders, insurers, and various departments of motor vehicles. Additional verification often requires visits to a DMV office and conversations with an insurance agent, and data sharing between these parties and with other government agencies such as law enforcement is often slow, manual, and complicated. Blockchain has the power to transform this process for each of the parties involved. With blockchain, data is secured and only accessible through a special key based on permission level. Updates happen close to real time, providing rapid access to the latest data. Costs can be lowered through reduced transaction time, simplified data interfaces, and less manual oversight. And increased transparency and security can help to reduce fraud, waste, and abuse. KPMG's blockchain team has already shown how the technology can be used for routine DMV transactions. Imagine a system where every vehicle record becomes part of a blockchain when it rolls off the production line. This record includes manufacturer details like make, model, and price, and is transferred to the dealer. Once sold, the record with relevant customer data is shared with the DMV. The DMV checks the vehicle's history, verifies driver details, and confirms registration of the vehicle to the customer, instantly assigning license plates and creating new records such as title, registration, and insurance cards. Continued updates to the vehicle record facilitate manufacturer recalls and insurance claims. With borderless information sharing, law enforcement and regulatory agencies can securely query the data, confident that they're seeing the latest and most complete version of any vehicle's title, registration, and insurance status. KPMG is a leading advisor to government with extensive federal, state, and local experience in harnessing the latest innovations and technology. Let KPMG show you how blockchain can help transform the way you record and manage property registration data, enabling you to better serve your citizens.
All right. So that is kind of a highlight of what can be created in this realm. I'm going to show one other video that Matt brought to my attention some time ago. It also talks about kind of a more comprehensive application set for automobiles and blockchain.
Vehicle from a car owner.
So this is about a 4-minute video, and I think this is pretty exciting regarding what could be implemented with blockchain and in a very comprehensive use case set. And obviously, Oaken Innovations is working on this now. So here you go.
Using a smart contract on the... Hello again from Oaken Innovations. We're excited to show you at Money 2020 some of the things we've been working on with Toyota Research Institute. Earlier this year, we debuted our proof of concept, blockchain-enabled peer-to-peer car lease application at Consensus in New York. This application allowed consumers to lease a vehicle from a car owner using a smart contract on the Ethereum blockchain, file storage on IPFS, and a mobile application to lease and control access to the vehicle. Prior to our car lease model, we developed a blockchain-powered automated toll road system with connected cars. This project won us the top honors among the entire world at the UAE International Blockchain Hackathon. These applications allow for instantaneous remittance between the transacting parties. They do this without the need for payment processors by using logic coded to a smart contract. The hyper-secure blockchain-based IoT controls add a level of security not currently available on the consumer market, all while reducing or eliminating the need for server infrastructure. Oaken Innovations wants to give you a glimpse into the mobility future we envision and show why this is important to the payments and financial services industry. We use the blockchain for application logic and data storage, replacing traditional server infrastructure. Here we use the blockchain to store vehicle identity along with GPS. Now we add road and mapping data and allow trusted entities to update this decentralized data layer, Smart road sensors can also feed this database. This allows for a complete view of all vehicles and infrastructure with current construction and traffic conditions while allowing third-party applications to be built on top of this data. Let's amend that vehicle data for lease or ride-sharing services. This now allows consumer mobile apps for ride-sharing or leasing using this blockchain services layer. In a ride-share or lease transaction, things get very interesting. Using blockchain technology, instant value transfer and microtransactions are now possible. Within one smart contract transaction is instant remittance to several parties, including the vehicle owner and driver, insurance provider, toll road authority, and road tax entity. Why is this valuable? The automobile owner and driver receive guaranteed and instantaneous payment of funds. Microinsurance policies for each ride or lease transaction can be paid to an escrow contract, then remitted to the insurance provider once the ride is complete, with the balance of that escrow going to the rider or lessee. We can use an escrow contract for autonomous toll payments and even eliminate toll gates from the toll road infrastructure, as we can prove the location of the vehicle using GPS. We can even have smart toll road infrastructure where roads are only charged during peak hours. As consumer behavior moves away from purchasing fuel and favoring pay-per-ride mobility over vehicle ownership, road and infrastructure authorities will face a shortfall of tax revenue that currently funds the construction and maintenance of roads. Included in the mobility transaction is a usage-based tax to replace this lost revenue, even short trips where a fraction of a penny is needed for taxation. All of these parties receive the benefits of instantaneous remittance, all included in a single transaction user experience, all without the need for payment processing intermediaries. Let's go further. With this blockchain platform in an autonomous driving world, we get to go beyond rider mobility into other applications. Solar energy production is highest when the sun is shining the most. That's typically in the middle of the day. Energy demand typically spikes in the morning and then again in the evening, time that solar energy production is weakest. During low mobility demand times, automated vehicles can store solar energy during peak production times, then deliver that energy when and where it is needed. Also, since we have the automobiles equipped with 5G connectivity, we can provide a self-healing mesh network across large areas, as well as partitioned consumer Wi-Fi service, all while the vehicles receive microtransaction reimbursements for sharing their internet connection. Thank you for your time, and we hope you enjoyed our version of the blockchain-powered vehicle future. For more information, please visit us at oakeninnovations.com and blockchain-mobility.org.
So you guys should have that knocked out by about, 2:30 this afternoon? Okay. So, any questions or comments about that stuff? Well, I'd like to introduce Matt. Matt, you mind coming up and talking about just a brief summary, because we went over everything, or a lot in depth on Wednesday, but what prompted you to highlight the auto title use case and so forth?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we certainly won't go through all of it like Wednesday evening, but under the meetup, there's also a,
let me pull that up.
Yeah, there's a link to a Google Doc if you guys want to pull that up, and it's got several links in it as well for today if you'd like to use them. Just speaking to the problem a little bit, or what the idea is with the automobile titles. Right now, I mean, motor vehicles not everybody's favorite place to go in Arizona right now. Long wait times. There's a lot of inefficient manual processes. They store a number of their paper documents on film, and that is a time intensive. It takes several weeks to pull film for error correction right now with motor vehicle. We get to do it occasionally at the dealership, so that's why I can speak to that some. Also, just thinking through it, ADOT's got a lot of brick and mortar locations throughout the state. They have to for people to be able to come in. If we could develop a network that allows for these titles to be transparent about not the actual ownership data, but is there an owner? Is there a lien against the vehicle? Can it be transferred? If we can create a network that the individuals or key stakeholders like dealerships, third-party title companies can interact with, We can create a much more streamlined system. We could probably save the state, I think, if we could pull this off. I mean, literally, I think it could be millions of dollars of savings in the brick and mortar locations of the state, create a much better experience for all us individuals with vehicles, buying, selling, transferring registration. And there's also there's a lot of components to allow for fraud today. Even though I'm a car dealer, I've bought and sold several motorcycles privately through Craigslist, for example. And boy, that's scary. I mean, doing that several times, people let me rip them off 5, 6 different ways. And I'm telling them, no, we can't do the transaction here. We have to go here. We have to do it like this. I'm explaining to each of these individuals, I could fraud you 5, 6 different ways trying to do a transaction like this. And again, that's just to the broken system, the paper titles. An individual holding a paper title doesn't mean that's actually the real title, or that is that's who the owner is, even though they're holding the title. You can go get a duplicate title and it supersedes that title, even though they're holding that one. They can be lost, destroyed, a number of different things. So looking at the blockchain, could we develop a network of sorts that can handle a lot of these transactions, eliminate the fraud with the programming put into the contracts? No. Cool. Questions, comments? I can go into more detail. We spent a bit of time on it Wednesday evening, so yeah, go ahead.
You know, I know it's like a pretty common joke about how DMV, like you got any place you get bad service, people say, hey, you're a reject from DMV, that sort of thing. Is that something that is the same in every state? I mean, surely one state, the nation somewhere must have got their act together.
Yeah.
Or is this a federal problem?
The focus for this use case is specifically for Arizona, with consideration of, I think this could roll out to multi-state, but right now each state in our country is responsible for their own motor vehicle title. So it's very individualized by state. I can't speak to that specifically, and I want to be careful how I word this. This is recorded, it's public, but there's a lot of stigma behind sometimes public jobs or government jobs are not held to a certain standard, or things are allowed to move more slowly. I have received firsthand stories from an individual who owns a private company for third-party titling. It's the same services as motor vehicle, except it's a for-profit business. He charges a little bit higher fees to the public. And he tells stories of his people having to go to train at motor vehicle, and motor vehicles literally telling his staff, slow down, you're making us look bad. You can't process this much work in a day. So I gotta believe it's starting somewhere there. Of if that's happening, that's very inefficient. It's not, I think that leads to our wait times and a lot of those problems.
So it's more of a management use.
I think that's a good part of it. But again, if we can use technology and software to eliminate some of the manual processes, that certainly speeds things up as well.
Yeah, I think the bigger point is that every state has a different system, and there might be an opportunity to harmonize the motor vehicle registration process, which could offer some huge efficiencies and advantages, because people move all the time, and moving from state to state is a huge issue. And the other almost parallel scenario is with real estate title. So, you have different real estate title platforms in each state. So, there are some really interesting dynamics to this use case. When you look at that Open Innovation, you look at the Open Innovation opportunities where, they're tying together so many different things, all the way from payments, micropayments, to ride share, to dynamic energy capture and distribution. It's that video, in my view, is absolutely crazy, and in my view, drives home the opportunity set around this decentralized distributed ledger realm. So, Marcus, welcome.
Thank you.
Marcus has been hard at work on a UI for our voting on the blockchain or scoring on the blockchain for later on. And I'll let Marcus introduce himself and the other folks that came in a little bit later. But there were some other questions or comments. Yeah.
Well, this is sort of like, I'm a car guy, so I mean, I've collected cars for a long time. I guess something I thought about last year is when things that, and new cars can do it, but I was thinking, how could there be a use case to track classic cars? I mean, you know, there's so many rip-offs out there and so many artificial parts. You know, someone can put together a 1969 Boss 302 Mustang out of completely repoed parts.
Yeah.
And reproduction or even remanufacture. How can you, you know, it's kind of hard to go back and say, let's somehow blockchainize a 1969 Mustang, but you can do it on modern cars, say post a certain era, 1980s and stuff like that, because they've got the VIN tags on the fenders, and you can't really duplicate those peel-off tags. You know, so within the government, you have those peel-off tags, and you say, here's some, you know, it destroys the tag. So yeah, that, I mean, the used car world, because I would like to know if I'm going to Craigslist, do you have some kind of way I could look at saying, is this a numbers matching car?
Yeah, yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, I've thought about it. I mean, new cars is easy because you manufacture, boom, and it's brand new, it's off the shelf. So, yeah, it's an interesting use case I've thought about. I'm like, now how can that be done in the used car market so that a buyer can be more confident what he's doing? Because I don't like going through dealers only because of the sales tax thing. You know? And especially when you buy something, you're going to pay that.
It's more expensive with all the fees.
Like on it. So I like to search my cars in the private market. But then it gets really big. Then you know, if you're shopping for a car in Texas or Florida or whatever, you have to personally go there, or you have to hire somebody to do it for you to go look at it. So I mean, how can you be more secure in what you're doing in that world? You know?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So thank you for those comments. And by the way, what is it called? Providence, the tracking.
Providence, yeah.
Yeah, and that use case was brought up in a slightly different application set earlier today as well. So I think.
One last thing. My wife is from Alaska, and I keep them on things. Or she keeps on forwarding me stuff, technology stuff that comes out of the Baltics. Estonia is one of the most advanced, technologically advanced countries, and it's supposedly the first blockchain organized country. And that would be an interesting case study, only from the aspect that, from what I understand, and I'm no expert on it yet, a person can go into a doctor's office over there in Estonia, and the doctor will have access, the office will have access to the records of the patient, and they don't need to bring the records over. They're there, and they're partitioned so that they can only look at what's specific to that person's health.
Yeah.
They can't go and dig into their financial records or insurance records or whatever that is. And if they do, then they get fined and put in prison. And it's even so advanced that, because again, that was my previous one. But if the Russians were to take over those countries again, they're the only country that can operate their country and shut it down from outside the country. So they have satellites in England and in Switzerland.
Yeah, we've looked at
that
Estonia a number of times in this group.
You bring up a good point, because in the use case document, we have a link to an automobile title application in Estonia using blockchain. So, yes, Sean.
I'm intrigued by it, but I share the pain. I'm originally from Louisiana, so trying to do bring a title over from another state to bring it to Arizona is a complex nightmare. I mean, it takes weeks, sometimes months, and the process is still not resolved. You have to go back and forth and almost physically fly back and forth to get people to get the action just down the line. And so I think that I hear decentralized, and when I think decentralized, I think that everybody has control of their own, identity, their own, their own thing. But at the same time, in the United States, this is a common occurrence in a lot of major industries where we have individual states who want autonomy as an individual state, but their system that they do is different from another state, and they're trying to allow citizens to be able to transpose those borders, and doing so, being able to transpose borders, it creates a nightmare because I have a system that runs on this, and you have a system that runs on that. We don't communicate. Then we got to go to paper, which we're getting to, like, we're going backwards. You know what I mean? And it's extremely frustrating for someone to even move, to relocate. Let's say I have another opportunity for, a job opportunity in another state. Just the nightmare of thinking about all the things they have to do that deal with the insurance industry, that deal with, and I'm not just saying like auto insurance, I'm saying health insurance.
Just from one state to the other.
Just from one state to the other, just to pack up and move, just the logistical nightmares of crossing those different things and different planes. It makes it very, it makes it for a very, it puts a bad taste in people's mouth overall. And if there's something that can be done, but my worry is that every state is not, if we develop a unified system, right, something that is uniform that they can actually access and use it, it'll help law enforcement, it'll help the insurance industry, it'll help all, even the government regulation and how people can actually transact with it. Who's going to be on board and who's not? So you think that's what you have. Let's say 40 states go with it, but another 10 say, you know what, we want to do our own thing. Then how do you get them to have some type of uniformity in the process? How do you get?
So at this point, can I please, I don't mean to be interrupting you, but at this point, can we hear maybe from the more technical guys in here about how that can be achieved? Because what you're describing is a classical, when you sit in these things, it's a classical, like before blockchain, it's just a matter of databases, relational databases and how they interface to each other. So how, from the technical people, maybe, what's the first thing that comes to their mind? Because all states are, you never have a universal system for sure, right? But if, few states choose to cooperate, like for example, in gun databases, how they have reciprocity, people that open carry, but they can only do it in only a few states because they have reciprocity. So they probably share. So how is that achieved in technical terms?
Well,
I mean, I know a little bit about it. But
I think that's a good segue
how do you
into kind of the next segment, because we do have some time constraints, but I think that, Matt, was there anything else you wanted to say?
Relates.
Yeah.
Well, just to speak specifically to these few comments, I might have a little bit different take, and I realize I'm not coming from the technical side of things, but as you were discussing with the different states, that to me sounds like more of a political challenge. Is you have states that have set themselves up and want to do things their way, and they're isolated states. So I think it actually becomes more of, if we could develop a usable, workable solution for the state of Arizona, if we could get the state looking at it, adopting it, then you can go to other states and say, okay, how does your system work? We can build this out in the network a little, and now this same network interfaces with 2 states. And then third state, okay, how does it interface?
Yeah.
And because they're going to have their legacy processes and databases that it's going to have to interface with.
But how does blockchain enter into it? Because it's a second, like in payments, for instance, there's, the bigger argument now is how, because you can't scale, so you have to have these second layer solutions. And then they talk, we do off-chain, side chains, and then you can be communicating to on-chain.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, this type of stuff, is that how the developers in the room, is that how you do it for databases, for DMV databases, or not?
Yeah, good question. I think something to try to be answered today. Yeah.
Well, I should mention also that what you mentioned about the political thing, I've been researching the stuff that I was doing, and time and time again, what I run into is you look at the existing databases that occur. The reason they exist currently is because of some type of special interest made it happen. So things like a good example would be a medical database, where whenever you go to the doctor, they can find out what drugs you've got, who you've taken, that sort of thing. So there's this big database somewhere where they can find out, exactly what you've got in terms of medical care. Same thing with the auto insurance industry. They have a database that keeps track of all your loss claims and everything. So anywhere you go in the country, they'll find out like how many accidents you've had. Same thing with tickets. Behind that database, there is a company making money off of that information. And for somebody to walk in and say, oh, I got a blockchain version of this thing, good luck with that, because they have made sure that through special interests, all these laws are in place to keep it from changing against their will.
It's like
So they've locked up the collection of the data, decimation of the data, and use of that data. And don't think that the government isn't going to come back and say, oh, okay, that nice data that you've got, these lawyers are now just creating a law that uses your database, so give it up. You're the only guy that can use it. So there's a lot of interesting things that I found out that really shocked me as to how, even if you got a blockchain version of this, politically, there's going to be special interests that's already got this figured out for you.
In this case, you're dealing with government.
Exactly, yeah.
Now you're dealing with a consortium of companies that you can lobby.
So-
You're dealing with the source of government.
So there's, one of the interesting parts about the whole, anything else you wanted to say, Matt?
No.
Okay, thanks. So one of the interesting things about this new realm that we're dealing with is there are a lot of things that are blending together. So I come from the telecom background, and when I first started in telecom, a telephone call was very distinct from a radio program or a TV program or whatever. And then this internet thing came along, and all of a sudden YouTube starts to blur all those distinctions between, what is a phone call, what is a television broadcast, what's a radio, what's a podcast. All that stuff started to blend together. And what you guys are bringing up is that now we've got the political realm and the policymaker realm blending into the technical realm. And you don't have to go any further than to watch the congressional hearings with Facebook to see that in action today. So everybody's bringing out some really awesome dimensions and points to this. And, we're talking about the incompatibility between states and their title registry and their public administration and all that stuff. All that stuff is on the table. But today, all we really, if we get out of today just a very, very simple understanding of some of this, which is our goal, basically, that's going to be like the first step in starting to tackle these massive issues. So all these things are on the table, but the intention of this group and this gathering today is simply to do one little thing that starts to get us on the path of creating something around blockchain and so forth.
Literally, one thing.
Yeah, explain.
What?
Explain, what do you mean curly?
No, there's this meme going around that basically came from that movie with, what's that guy that played the Western, where they asked, Curly, he was the guy that he was on the Oscars where he did a one-handed push-up and he was 80 years old.
Oh.
What was his name?
Clint Eastwood.
Not Clint Eastwood. No, it was the other guy. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Yeah.
I think it was anyway, so he's famous for saying, what's the secret of life? And the guy goes, just one thing.
Cool.
One thing at a time, which is also the motto of the Marines.
City Slickers, wasn't that the
Yeah, City Slickers. Jack Palance?
Jack Palance, yeah.
That was his name, yeah. So, anyway, I think we've done a good job of laying out a potential use case. And by the way, this afternoon, you don't have to do any of that. If you guys come up with a different, if you choose to stay and break into teams and collaborate during the afternoon, which will start around 1 o'clock for like 3 hours, the intention is simply to kind of get a prototype started. And it's simply to do something pretty basic, pretty simple. So it's not to do any of this really fancy stuff, but our opportunity is to get together from time to time like this, learn from one another, and, you know, get things started. And then we can continue the conversation over time via the Slack channel, hopefully via a collaborative workspace that's blockchain centric. That's another piece that we're trying to put into place. So anyway, the intention of those videos wasn't to overwhelm anybody. It was simply to highlight the profound nature of what we're dealing with here and how many of these things are coming together in terms of the policy, in terms of the data, in terms of the money, in terms of, you know, the ubiquitous nature of this that kind of floats above the legacy sovereignties and so forth. So I'm going to pause there before we get into some technical stuff. And we've got a couple of people that have joined us. And I think it would be valuable, Marcus, if you would introduce yourself. Marcus has been slaving away trying to build something for us to use.
Sure. My name is Marcus Brown. I am a freelance developer here in the Valley, blockchain architect. So I primarily deal with Ethereum and Hyperledger, but I love all things blockchain, so I like to explore similar technologies as well.
Yeah, and while you have the floor, Marcus, I'm going to say something that also ties in the automobile registration application, which is we are a focal point for autonomous vehicles in Phoenix. And it's my view that we could see blockchain become sort of like the air traffic controller for these autonomous vehicles. Is there anything you'd like to say about that, Marcus?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. There's like a lot of, I mean, there's at least a couple of use cases that pop out. One would be something that a lot of car manufacturers are into called fractional ownership, which is you have a fleet of autonomous vehicles and, you know, regular citizens can buy into the vehicles and pay on their upkeep but receive profits from their daily take, that sort of thing. So that's definitely like, there's a lot of areas to explore.
And you've kind of worked in that area a little bit, right?
A little bit with GM.
Yeah, with General Motors and using the Ethereum blockchain, correct?
Correct.
So Marcus is an expert in many dimensions, but that's one of them. And you know, you've been working away on the user interface, but we've viewed some videos this morning about Tidal on the blockchain from KPMG, as well as Oaken Innovations, which has a very comprehensive use case for automotive applications in blockchain. So thank you. Any questions for Marcus?
You know, that kind of leads me to the kind of just a simple question about tokenization of, you know, fractional ownership. So tokenization of a house or a commercial property. Very similar things you think going on, or do you more deep?
I mean, I think with fractional ownership, just off the top of my head, you would actually kind of need two cryptocurrencies. You would need the one that you're going to receive your daily payout in, that's stable, and then you're going to need something that you use for governance, so that you participate in this group of people that own these cars. You need to be able to vote proposals
So
and
the
that sort of
consensus
thing.
part of the blockchain
Right.
needs to be in a separate token.
Yes, because you have to decide on things like maintenance and whether to retire a car or bring work on, hire contractors, you know, repairmen, that sort of thing. So you don't want to receive your profits necessarily, and you might want to reinvest those. I'm kind of going a little bit too deep into it, but you want to receive your profits as a stable currency, so that you're not subject to the whims of the volatile crypto market as you try to make money off that thing. So,
What would you feel about using dye?
I would love to use dye. I've been following dye for a couple months now, and I think it's fantastic.
What's dye?
MakerDAO is a project that releases stable currency for Ethereum called dye. So it has that split where you have the Maker token, which is you use to vote proposals and tune the network, and then you have dye, which is a stable currency currently pegged to $1. And they have a bunch of mechanisms. If you guys are interested, just look up MakerDAO in their white paper, but they have a bunch of mechanisms to keep the dye token soft pegged to $1.
Right now it's just single collateral, but they're going to be adding multi-collateral soon. They're going to be doing DGX, which is digital gold. Coin, essentially every one coin is equal to 1 gram of gold. That project already started, it's going, it's very legit. I'm trying to remember, I know they just mentioned they were going to add something else too recently, some other token, and they're going to be just adding a bunch of other tokens that keep that collateral past just Ethereum, you know. That way it stays a stable coin.
So it's a protocol to be used by other.
It's a set of ERC20 tokens. Yeah, but there's some interesting applications, but we can get into that.
Yeah.
That's a little bit but
cool. Thank you. And sir, you in the back row, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Drew Helgeson. I've been in IT for over 20 years, but I'm looking to get into the blockchain architecture style and things. So as an architect, do you do a lot of development, or is it just know how everything works and bring it all together?
I'm pretty hands-on, so I do participate in designing the application around the use case, but then also spinning it up as well. So I do some back-end development as well as front-end when I need to. But mainly, I mean, honestly, I've only been doing POCs for the last couple of years, so I haven't really done anything large in production, like something like Property or Nori or something like that. But
We mean like PLCs?
proof of concept.
Proof of concepts.
So.
Yeah, my company's really starting to take off. Not my company, the company I work for is really starting to take off with blockchain. I just want to jump into this early. Well, I know it's not early anymore, but it's still early in the enterprise.
No, this is the time if you are a developer and you're interested in doing blockchain architecture, this is definitely the buyer's market right now for us contractors, because there's like more people with ideas than there are developers currently. So definitely would encourage that. That's your interest.
Cool. And Drew, what would you like to get out of today?
I'm just learning as much as I can. So like I said, I want to focus more on the architecture. You know, if I wanted, I could probably sit down and be a code monkey if I wanted to, but you know, I like putting the designs together, the flow, the permissions, how to solve the problem that the customer has, listening to the use case. Put a good design there for it.
Yeah, and then real quick, just kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, a guy that I've been working with at GM, he's a business analyst, just became their chief blockchain architect over there. So you don't have to come from development to be, able to design blockchain applications. You just need to understand the technology well enough.
Well, I'm an application architect. So I work for the largest healthcare company, and you know what they're doing right now. So it's a big opportunity in my company to be able to jump into that.
Right. Well, so you can follow different paths to get into it.
Cool.
Sure.
Yes, plenty of room for everybody.
So let's jump into like what I call like the skateboard or the tricycle of blockchain. And I'm going to do a little screen sharing here. And basically, so this is, if you want a bare bones basic start where you can build a blockchain in basically 60 lines of JavaScript, I would recommend you check out this SovG coin. And I've got some Raspberry Pis over here, and one of them has SovG coin already loaded. I don't have them fired up yet, but I'll fire them up by the end of lunch. But basically, this, and there are other tutorials out there, But this has some pretty good videos where it's about a 14-minute video, and he talks you through the 60 lines of JavaScript that you can build, where it does the hashing and the blocks and all that. And then he also has created a video with additional code that shows you how proof of work works. And you can go to the GitHub. It looks like he's added something else: mining rewards and transactions. So this, in my view, is a really good, very simple way to get involved with blockchain. And basically, if you, a team today could, copy this code, do something in basically 15 minutes to satisfy, our bare bones basic project for blockchain. And so I just want to highlight this as a way to get started if you haven't done anything with blockchain and you're looking for a really simple way to get started and see how it works. Another thing, so any questions about that? Before I move on to another one. And I should have queued this up. Here is what I would call like a bicycle. And this is called cryptocurrency implementation. This is called Naive Coin. And it's basically more robust. It's a blockchain implementation, including wallets, including signatures for transactions, including mining in 1,500 lines of JavaScript. And this has kind of got some momentum, and there are a couple of developers that are behind this, and they're sort of riffing off of one another, and there's a little bit of a community that started in this Naive Coin. But this is like, once you've gone through Sub-G Coin and you've kind of exhausted that, then you can move on to Naive Coin, and there's a GitHub repository that you can download, and he's done a good job of showing how this works with some nice diagrams. It uses Swagger for the API component, and it also uses Ramda for the JavaScript, which is functional programming in JavaScript, which I haven't gotten into deeply, but I'm very interested in exploring Ramda for the functional programming side. But you can see here that there are blocks, blockchain, mining, wallets, peer-to-peer connectivity. It's fairly robust, and you don't have to get into do a deep dive into either Ethereum or Bitcoin in order to get a really good handle on how a pretty robust, full-featured blockchain implementation works. So I won't go into that any further. The other part, the other like next level up, called Toy Chain. Why? There we go. Now, this is very rough, but this is written in Go, and it's tied to something called IPFS. So this was put together like a month or so ago, 2 months ago, I guess, by a fellow named Jeremy Johnson who's the core developer of Go for something called IPFS, the Interplanetary File System. And is anybody familiar with Go? Pretty handy with Go in the room? No? Okay, so you're a Go wizard? No, you're not. So anyway, well, maybe you can.
Well, yeah, no choice because if you play with IPFS.
Yeah. So maybe you can fire up Toychain. But anyway, so a couple of you are in the healthcare industry. And in my view, one of the most valuable things that you can take a look at is IPFS. So in that Open Innovation video, you notice that they were using both the Ethereum blockchain and IPFS, and others are doing the same. So they're using the logic of Ethereum, and they're using the storage, robustness, and peer-to-peer nature of IPFS. So in healthcare records, and if you're interested in connecting with somebody who's actually a physician, who's actually, developing in IPFS, I can connect you with that person. But I think that IPFS offers a really, really powerful set of opportunities in the blockchain and decentralized realm, especially in healthcare.
They started out using Hyperledger, and now they just switched over to Quorum.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
What was it, Quorum?
Quorum.
Quorum. JP Morgan's instance of Ethereum.
Yeah, and that's Quorum's a result of R3, is that right? Or am I thinking of something else?
R3 is Corda.
It's what?
Corda.
Corda, okay. That's the difference. So all this stuff is like in the prototype realm.
Oh, yeah.
None of this stuff is really scalable and so forth.
What they're doing is all that healthcare the big dogs are getting together and talking to each other. So there's a cross, communication going on. And they're only working on the provider network right now. So right now, if you're a doctor, you have to go to every single healthcare company and say, this is my specialty, these are my codes, this is my, my medical number and all this stuff. And give all this information to every single health plan. And one health plan may have an address that's different or a code that's different, or maybe their own custom implementation. So what the healthcare companies are doing is, let's let the providers go to a blockchain, and then we all go to the blockchain and get that information. So it's one single source of truth for provider networks.
And Drew, how far along would you say that initiative is at this point?
They announced it publicly last month that we're, for the first year, it's just going to be proof of concept, working together, ironing out the bugs, getting communications going, getting other health companies to join the initiative as well, and then trying to run this thing, and work out all the kinks and the security of it and whatnot. And then, after that, they'll regroup and see if they need to keep it going on a proof of concept, choose a different technology, advance it somehow, or go live with it.
And is there a location where that's kind of centralized? LA, New York, whatever, is it completely decentralized?
I don't know. I would assume it's where my company headquarters is. And I really don't know.
Okay.
It's global, sorry.
Oh, it's local.
Global.
Oh, global, yeah.
So how come you didn't mention the Medicaid billing codes and all of that stuff? Isn't that the universal single source of what you're talking about is?
Medicare is run by the government. Medicaid is run by the states and sometimes the county. And so Medicaid from state to state is very, very different.
Well, Medicaid is the state's run. So but there's no federal level.
One is,
can we see the CMS 1500?
Billing is different than provider networks, which is different from provider networks, which is different from accumulation. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, we're gonna hold off on, the discussion for healthcare and specific use cases. I'm gonna turn it over to Jason, and he's gonna talk about Truffle and do a demo on Truffle, which is a introduction to the Ethereum platform and construct. So you need to.
I just need HDMI cables.
Okay, here you go. Let's. There you go. And are there two inputs for HDMI? No, just one. Okay.
Do we need to display this up here though?
We don't need to display that, but when we disconnect, the live stream's going to disconnect.
Well, we're not disconnecting, we're just removing the HDMI.
Okay. Let's give it a try.
Is there a video switch inside that podium?
Yeah, I think so. Why?
You might have to hit the HDMI.
Well, you already has HDMI stuff, would you? So.
Yeah, let's try it though. Whoa.
Just a little bit on and off.
Are you good? You're connected? Mm-hmm. Let's turn it off.
It's not flipping the display off. So. Maybe just change it.
I'll let you do it.
There we go. So I guess raise your hands just so I can get like a little bit of a estimate here. How many people have actually played around with any kind of Ethereum development? Okay, so a good number of you. How many of you have used Truffle for some of that? Okay, so quite a few of you as well. So I won't go into too much detail on how to use Truffle, I guess. And maybe what we can do is go over some different ways of how to interact with existing Truffle applications. So let's see here. So actually, one of so I've been working kind of like as a small, very small side project over the weekend. I think I was working on building a utility library that what it does is it takes whatever Truffle application that you're working with and trying to plug it in so that it can dynamically read from all of your Truffle contracts in your in whatever application you're running. So the actual utility library, if you're curious, is available on GitHub somewhere. This here, it's github.com/JasonHorton/contract-state-util. Because I was just, I just kind of was working on this over the weekend. Right now, it kind of only statically reads the contracts which exist inside of the same this specific GitHub repo. It would need a little bit of very small amount of messing around with, such that you can just pass in a dynamic like, this is where my contracts folder exists with my Truffle artifacts, and then it can just parse those. But what it does is after you have a Truffle project, quick refresher on how Truffle works is what Truffle does when you run something like Truffle compile, Truffle migrate, etc., is it takes all of your defined Solidity files, which I have 2 examples in here, or 3 rather. I have a couple examples in here which define just some simple variables of integers, unsigned integer, string, Boolean.
Can you expand that?
And it takes that contract, that Solidity file, and then Truffle, aside from compiling to its bytecode, it creates some artifacts, which if I run the command, I'm going to run it in Truffle develop just for simplicity's sake. If I run the compile command, it will it'll create a new folder called builds. Inside that build folder, you'll have contracts folder. Within that contracts folder, you'll have a JSON, standard JSON object, which, let me close this right-hand side real quick. It'll create this JSON object file, which contains all of your different variables, the different the nodes in here, the bytecode, etc. And you end up with effectively the contract ABI, which is how you're interacting with all of your contracts in any kind of Truffle or really most other dApp frameworks as well. And you have just different defined variables in here which map directly to what's defined inside of your Solidity file. So if I have an integer named _int2 in my more states, or let's look at states rather. So
can you learn it one time?
Sorry?
Can you learn just use one time?
Yeah. So. So if I have an integer in here named _int and it's assigned a value of 0, I can look back inside of my states.json, which again is that file that's created after you run Truffle compile. And you'll see all the different variables in here. You won't see their value in here, but you'll see just their name, what inputs it takes. So one thing that happens with Solidity file or Solidity contracts is as long as they're defined as public variables, they automatically set these getter functions, which just effectively map your variable to a function which takes no inputs and outputs the value of that variable. So I have unsigned integer, I have the _string, and all the different various variables that were defined inside of there. So what I've done was I kind of went around and I realized that there's not really any existing libraries out there right now that do a very good job of allowing you to build like a simple dashboard that allows you just to display the current state of all your different variables that you've defined. So it makes debugging a little bit tedious if you can't have a simple dashboard that does exactly that. So what this does is if I run this command here, I should be able to pop up a new window on this completely random port. and and inside this contracts.js file, which I've written, which is something that I used internally or use internally at Nori, is it has this dynamic function calling function called, where's that? Called contract func. And effectively what it does is it's just it takes in the contract name that you want to call, the contract function that you want to call, parses it and splits it, and then it uses Truffle's contract to effectively create the object which is needed to invoke functions against it. And then if there's no parameter given, it just automatically calls the getter function, which is output from the Solidity file after you have variables defined inside of that Solidity file. So and then below that, you'll have a more kind of beefy, uglier version called get contract state, which is what this whole application is effectively going to use. It's looking like I have some issues here.
So you don't actually log it, you just show it on the screen.
Yeah, well, it logs it too. I have a non-UI version, which does log it. Remember my test password here. So I have a UI version, and then I have a non-UI version as well. Oh, I need to deploy it, that's fine. So once they're deployed, I can see the various variable names, the type of variable it is, et cetera, as well as the current state that it exists in. So if I want to play around with the string variable defined inside the states contract, what I can do with Truffle inside the develop console is create a little object here.
Can you expand that, Jason?
Not really. No, I only need to be in here for a second though. Good. So if I take, what I've done here, I realize you can't really see it very well. And then what I can do is I can call a setter function on the string variable. So I think it's called set string. So I'm saying, hey, states contract, set your string variable to be blockathon test. And I'll go ahead and set that string, and then I can still look at my my dashboard here, and then after a second, it'll automatically update the dashboard here, and you can see that the string value has changed to blockathon test. And so what this allows you to do is at least in the context of Nori, there are some very extreme examples that we're dealing with that get very, very complex, very, very complicated, very, very quickly. And without something that tells me the state of all the different variables, it's very hard to really debug anything and tell me like what actions do I need to take next before I can actually allow for certain functions to fail. Because in its current state, Ethereum, while much more, in my opinion, much more advanced than any other blockchain out there for building dApps, there's still all kinds, it's still very new, and some of the debugging tools are very, very bulky. They're very, they're just kind of fresh. So when you get contracts that fail or revert, you can't really tell why it reverted without like really pulling up the transaction and then looking at why it reverted and then parsing through your contract and looking for that revert statement. So what I did was, so in the context of Nori, we use identity contracts. So identity contracts serve something like permissions in your operating system. So you'll have admin users and non-admin users in different groups, et cetera. And all functions that are needing to be invoked on the main meaty contracts, such as the exchange contracts, the transfer contracts, et cetera, they first get sent to the identity contract, and the identity contract is what sends it on forward to the destination contract. And so having an admin dashboard, which is only visible to the developers really, for displaying what the current permission state for the public key trying to invoke that function is, was extremely useful for us, because otherwise we had to keep pulling up, okay, why did my transaction fail? Was it because there's a bug in the actual Solidity function, or was it just because I wasn't parsing it through the right identity permission? So building something like this was super useful, and I'm currently working on allowing this particular library to just kind of be like an NPM package that you would just have a dependency, and then you would parse it the flag or pass it the flag and say, here's where my truffle contracts folder is. Read all my states and dynamically get every single variable that's defined in every single one of my contracts and tell me what its current value is. So this, I mean, it really would take maybe one more day to get it to that particular state. But if anybody's curious or wants to hack on this even, feel free. It would take I honestly don't think it would take very long to have the ability to just allow for your project to depend on this so that you can debug your contracts a little bit more. So again, it sounded like everybody had at least some context on how Truffle worked. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Yeah.
How involved is the identity function? What does it look at specifically?
Oh, so the identity function that I use is it's a derivative of how uport's identity contracts work. If you go to, I've modified it a little bit so that it's a little bit more advanced, because again, most of the contracts and other JavaScript libraries out there are so new and fresh that they're not really, in my opinion, some of them are not really using the latest and greatest of some of the newer JavaScript stuff that you can do. But you can get a basic idea of how these work. If you go to the uport-project/uport identity, so it's in here, you can see exactly how that proxy works. What it does is and I think I derived it to actually remove some of these intermediary steps as well, because they're specific to what uport needs to do and not specific to what I was needing to do. But what you're effectively doing is you're sending all transactions against your identity. That identity contract then compiles down the function that you're trying to call. So you create a function, because I can pull up an example of what it looks like.
Is this the live Ethereum code?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of those functions looks something like this. So in the context of Nori, we have functions that allow people to mint or create new non-fungible tokens. So these non-fungible tokens are used in our ecosystem to represent carbon removal certificates. Those carbon removal certificates effectively just have different specific attributes that specify real-world events which make them non-fungible. So in our ecosystem, we need the ability to allow like whitelisted suppliers of those certificates to create at will all the different carbon removal claims that they are wanting to sell to the public. So when you've whitelisted these public keys into these permissions contracts, they can then invoke against their identity the ability to create or mint those tokens. And so what you do is you pass it, hey, supplier identity contract, which I am part of, I want to mint, which is defined here. I want to invoke the mint function on the destination contract. And then you define the type of variable that you're about to pass in the next array. and then you're saying from my account with this data and this data, I want to create one carbon removal certificate. So rather than invoking that transaction directly against the carbon removal certificate non-fungible contract, you're sending the transaction to the identity contract. The identity contract sees this encoded function data and then it calls the Solidity assembly. If I look here, it sees this forward function, and it checks a few different things. It checks against some of the newer ERC 820 contract registries, which allow for this really, really interesting ability to do some complex operations in defining what different interfaces are allowed for different addresses, et cetera. And then it invokes the forward function in the participant identity, which trying to stay as much out of the weeds here as possible because it takes a little bit of context to really describe this. But inside here, what it boils down to at the very, very end of the function call, after checking if it's allowed to invoke set permissions or not, it calls this inline assembly inside the Solidity contract. It takes all that encoded data that you passed it, and as long as up until this point it passed all the checks, it said yes, this public key can invoke that. Yes, this particular function is currently toggled as allowed, i.e. we have the ability to turn on and off set functions if there's a bug in the contract, or if there's like an upgrade in progress. That way allows us to build upgradable contracts. If all of those pass with green lights, then it calls this final function, which assembles the actual transaction and then invokes the actual minting function against the carbon removal certificate non-fungible contract. All that said, that's effectively how the identity part works. And because of all those like complex pre-steps before the actual function happens, building a dashboard that simply told me the state of all the states leading up until that final transaction without having to debug the transaction and step through it was super useful, because I could simply say, I could parse this particular table here into like suppliers and different identities, and I could see which particular thing was going to, through the flow, throw that revert statement.
So do you use some type of regression testing on a daily basis, or is that you just kind of doing a free fall thing?
What do you mean by regression testing?
Well, you take a whole bunch of test data and you say, okay, I want to make sure that this is the end state, and then every day you...
Yes, I mean, I don't necessarily, I wouldn't call it regression testing in the context that we use it, but I definitely write tests for that particular use case. I give it a data set, and anytime that I'm upgrading contracts, I make sure that it hasn't broken it doesn't regress, it doesn't backwards break everything that we've written to that date. So I definitely, for every contract I've ever written, there's a corresponding test for the function with test data, test input data, and make sure that it matches the output data.
So you know what? Going back to the identity thing, what's the specific attributes? Is it the hash? Is it their hash plus their timestamp plus what makes up the...
What makes up the identity?
The actual, yeah, like...
The identity is defined by a public key and corresponding contract interfaces. So I would have, my public key would be, so first of all, you have an identity contract, such as in the context of Nori, we have suppliers, we have people who can create tokens. In this token, you have an array of public keys, which you can add into this identity. So if you have a public key and I have a public key, we can add that public key in here. In addition to that, you have like kind of like group level permissions, which allow you to say this public key, well, you have like a global permission. You say that suppliers can perform all of these different functions on all of these different contracts. Then you have like per user permissions inside of there. So you have this public key, even though they're defined as a supplier, can invoke this function, this function, this function, but maybe for right now can't invoke this function.
The supplier gets a unique identifier.
Yeah.
Begin with, and then their tokens are really the generated public keys.
So it's this specifically. So you have a mapping of addresses and whether they're allowed or not. So you have a mapping of your public key to true or false. And then you have a general function or general mapping for the actual supplier identity, which is which interfaces is it allowed to call on which contracts and true or false.
So where is this state information stored typically in normal applications?
It's all in the blockchain. So it's all, the actual state itself is read from the blockchain.
So roughly, it's like how much gas it would cost to store a truck and
So that brings up another good point. Along that same line, I've been working on expanding another utility tool, which somebody did a really good job, but it needed a little bit of extra configuration, called
Morty's on the blockchain?
yeah. Last time you missed it.
I gotta take a look at it.
I want to expand that to be a non-fungible version, and then I can make a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, exactly.
So there was this fantastic library that somebody's recently written, which allows you to actually, so by default truffle tests, which I could actually run since I have the actual repo open here. It takes a long time to run through these tests when you're trying to test the gas functions. However, actually maybe I even have one already pre-generated. Yeah, I do. Great. What it does is, as long as you've written tests for each of your functions, the truffle test library, which is just Mocha at the end of the day, or Mocha and the associated test library. It runs through your tests and it tells you like what's the millisecond amount of time that it took to actually invoke that function. Well, it turns out that's kind of like worthless for blockchain utilities because you're constrained regardless to the block time of whether that function was able to execute or not. So what this does is it actually runs through your contracts in a forked test and gives you the actual gas consumption of calling or invoking that particular function. So for instance, not only do I test, like Bill, you were saying, do I regression test this stuff? I also actually test that anytime I upgrade my contracts, how much extra gas is that particular upgrade using, or less gas? How much optimization or de-optimization did that particular thing do? So when I look at something like, so what it's trying to call at the end of the day here is this CRC mint function. And that CRC mint function will give me a range of minimum, maximum, and average amount of gas required to do it. So on average, it's using 146,521 gas just to mint directly against the contract. To do that with the supplier mint, what it's doing is it's calling this mint here. And it's 62,276, but that's kind of inaccurate because it gets a little bit of a non-accurate estimate, or rather this is against the 10 token as well. But it's forward here. So it's 107,052 versus 146,251. But really, that's not quite true because all that's giving me an estimate is how much gas does it require to forward on through the contract. Then it still technically is going to invoke this guy. So if you take this, I think the average plus this extra 36,000, that's the approximate amount of gas. So in order to proxy it through these identity contracts, you take the original amount and you tack on about an additional 36,000 gas, which is maybe a couple cents at most.
What's this tool called? The gas.
In fact, this particular tool is called ETH-Gas Reporter. I forked this from somebody else. They did a fantastic job, so this isn't really me. However, I forked this and added a few functionalities that allow you to include said library into yours and specify that you want to test both regular tests and against your gas.
So I think you can run like npm install at Jason Horton /e-gash reporter to get my forked version. Okay, I think that's all we want to go over for right now. And then maybe after the lunch session or whenever we do the teams, we can circle back and go over some other stuff.
Okay. Then maybe we'll talk about CryptoPal.
Yeah, if I can get everything up in time.
Okay. Okay, we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, having some issues deploying a public testnet for some of the CryptoPal APIs. So just to give a brief introduction of what that will be is after lunch, what we've done at CryptoPal is we've wrapped some of the Web3 JSON RPC APIs into some more generalized, little more rather more specific API calls. So for doing things such as sending invoices and sending transactions, and then logging those transactions so that you can directly request money from one party to another. And then in addition, wrapping all of those APIs, including JSON RPC APIs, into an Android SDK, that if anybody wants to build an Android application, they can use that. So if I can get that testnet up and running, because it kind of depends on whether you can actually query any of those APIs, then we'll go over a little bit of that after lunch.
Any questions?
What was that last thing you said, for what purpose?
For building, so if anybody here wants to build like an Android-based application or use some of these APIs against a real like live running testnet versus a local development one, then I will be trying to provide that for people to deploy their contracts against the live running testnet.
Oh, okay. Through an Android.
Or not. There's also a web API. So there's a web API and an Android SDK.
Okay. Sorry about the audio visual stuff
How do you
here.
reset it? Yeah.
I don't know how to reset it. This is just me pressing buttons, so maybe that'll do the trick. And yeah. So, any questions, any comments at this point? Okay, just a show of hands, how many people are interested in doing a kind of a collaborative team hacking in the afternoon? Just about everybody. Okay, cool. Awesome.
One thing, can I make a request?
Sure.
Marcus, will you be able to give an architectural overview of blockchain? Right? It doesn't matter what you're actually working on, right?
Okay.
But I'm from like, I want to understand like from architectural overview, like, how do you go about designing?
Do you have a specific use case or you mean just?
Actually, I am in the same boat as he was.
Okay.
Right? So we are looking into, so basically he's from Opera, I'm from Humana. And we are working on a wider blockchain.
Okay.
Right? I'm not directly involved, but I want to understand how you lay out this blockchain, right? So that I can get more involved in this process.
Yeah. So the first question I would ask, and this kind of came up a little bit last week, but does your use case require permission or permissionless access to this blockchain? Like, can anybody access the data freely, or is it supposed to be more tight controls on
It will be eventually, because the thing is, if it is provider data, then it will be open.
Okay.
If it is like when it comes to patient data, then it's all regulations, HIPAA regulations and all those.
Okay. Okay. So you mean open as in anybody can get any data, or
Provided they have
like
the
customers, providers, they have
So
access
for
to-
example, Humana, right?
Yeah.
Humana has contracts with providers. They need not be able to go and see somebody else's contracts associated with another company.
Okay.
Right? But that is more from providers, right? Either these are hospitals or these are doctors, right? But when it comes to patients, right?
Right.
and someone brought up about patient data, right? It will be very specific to that doctor.
Okay.
Right? And another doctor who may not see that information should not.
Gotcha. So you have multiple participants in the system. You have Humana that is managing and providing both this data. You have providers who are also providing data, and patients who are providing and also consuming data.
Exactly.
So I mean, it definitely sounds like it's permission. And like I said last week, I would use something like Hyperledger, where that's the design from the start. And then basically it's about defining the models that you need to have in your system, who all the participants are, what their permissions should be, what they're allowed to see, what they're denied access to, and then finally, what sorts of transactions do you expect to happen. When you drill down into the data that you need to store, well, customer data, I don't know, can you tell me, does it get pretty chunky, like a lot of data per customer or per patient? Okay, so you can do that stuff for something like Hyperledger in the blockchain, but you might want to look at off-chain storage of all that data. So basically what you end up doing is you sort of anchor that data using a hash or something like that into the blockchain so that you can prove that the data, and then you might incorporate like NIST timestamps or something like that to prove that when it existed at a certain time, that it actually exists. And then, yeah, you can go from there and try to build something small and expand it out.
Does one interject how many hits per day or the scaling issue?
That's
Is
a good
that
point.
very important to this? How many hits that on average? Because it all depends on, it's all going to depend on that, the nodes you run and how this, the throughput of the system, how many hits do you need per day you need to know that, those numbers. Basically.
Eventually, yes, right? But
Yeah.
because the thing is, your performance is going to be important, right? So
Yeah.
you don't want to wait for 10 minutes to get the record back.
Right. So there's two things you gotta build for is the transaction processing speed and the query processing speed. So queries are a lot lighter to do obviously than transactions since you don't have to steal anything into the blockchain. But in the case of Hyperledger, the way it's architected is real brief. And there's a slide I can point you to, but you have order nodes which are responsible for writing the actual data to the blockchain. So you have peers that are responsible for ferrying that data to the orders, but then you have chain code that is your transaction processing that lives on the peers and the orders that processes transactions that go into the blockchain. So if you think of those as a distinct machine instance, that's where you can start looking at scaling. Your providers might need to have peers, but they probably need orders if they're, Humana is the one that really owns the data ultimately. There's different ways you can go with that, but that's just some considerations.
Would it be like a sawtooth or which?
I haven't looked at Sawtooth. Fabric is my, that's the one that's furthest along.
Is
from what I've seen.
Sawtooth the one that they talk about the fish market and fish sourcing?
I believe so. There's Sawtooth, Aroha, and there's like one or two other ones that I'm not that familiar with. The Hyperledger is an umbrella of different technologies, and Fabric is the one that's the crown jewel, I guess. The one that they're really putting all their effort into.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and form teams.
Well, I have a generic question before we do that. Have any of you guys considered GDPR that's coming online soon? It's a European thing that, in terms of privacy.
I watched a complete an hour, not watched, listened to, 1 hour and a half, podcast on that.
Yeah.
It's from, it was put out by a guy from Boston, would know the name, but it's a hedge fund, A16Z or something.
Oh, that's
Horowitz. San Francisco Horowitz, yeah.
Horowitz, yeah.
Anderson.
A16Z.
A16Z.
It's a really good podcast.
Very good one. So they put out 1 hour and a half audio on that. you know.
This is on Friday, they come on
Yeah,
Friday.
they barely kind of touch the surface section and all that. But, so in a nutshell, what I gained from that is that basically the European markets are taking privacy so seriously that they will eventually bleed into the US, they think. Something about like privacy is so, I forget now, sure.
So as
It's
far as
got
that
some
privacy
space
is
where
forgotten.
basically you have to compartmentalize, you know, the data so that you can, because if it leaks out, they're taking it so seriously, if it leaks out here and there, you are, you know, you're beholden to the governments, you know.
Yeah, so let's, I think that's an important point.
We can deal with that later. I
Yeah,
guess,
I think we can deal with it later. I think we've got some opportunities with the blockchain construct and realm to create some things that might be very appealing to the GDRP. So anyway, let's go ahead and break into teams, or at least get team captains. So I'm thinking maybe we do 5 teams. And if, you know, 1 or 2 teams are small, maybe they can combine to 4 teams. So the first starting point is, who would like to be a team captain? So Julian, you want to do that again? Okay, good. So Julian, team captain. Marcus, you want to be a team captain?
Yeah.
Okay. It would be awesome.
It's very reluctantly.
Well, you have experience with Hyperledger, and I think it'd be really cool to do something with Hyperledger around this.
Julian versus Marcus.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a thing.
Who else is in? Michael, are you interested in being a team captain?
It's my first hackathon, but.
That's okay. We'll guide you down a dead end path. So. Okay, so Michael. Is it E?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, good. So 2 more. Who else would like to be a captain?
We don't have that many teams.
Well, we might combine teams. And Jason, you're not participating, right?
I'll be working on this, deploying the voting thing,
Okay.
which I need to check with you.
Yeah.
Zach, you interested?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. 1 more. Drew, you interested? No? Marjan?
No.
No?
Who else has good experience?
Yeah, who has some experience here?
Mine's very minor.
Yeah. Let's leave it at 4 teams, okay? And then if, you know, a team has like 6 or whatever, we can go from there. So, all right? So, so the way we have done this in the past is we do kind of a round robin. And this is the way we're going to do it. So the round robin, hello, welcome. That's okay, you want to introduce yourself? You're actually a team captain, by the way. So.
My name is Rakesh and I work for Market Express.
Awesome.
Been learning basically Ethereum for some time, like the developer, launching smart contracts and stuff. just want to come here and see how I can contribute.
Cool.
What company you work with? American Express.
Okay, so here's the way we're gonna do it. We have the team captains in alphabetical order, all right? So we're gonna flip a coin, and we're gonna do a round robin, and whoever, so if it's heads, we're gonna start at the beginning of the alphabet. If it's tails, we're gonna start at the end of the alphabet. Fair enough? So it is heads. Anybody want to check? Okay. So Julian, you start. If you'll pick a person. Okay. So let's see. You can ask him any questions or whatever.
I'll get Jason's brother, Justin, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
Justin. Okay. Marcus, you want to pick a person? And you can point if you can't remember names. That's fine.
Can people like,
You can ask them questions.
yeah,
if they-
shout out like skill sets? What are you good at?
Interview.
They need to do a whiteboarding.
Any designers, like web designers or front end designers, UX, anything like that?
Full stack.
Full stack.
Full stack.
Yeah.
I use React a lot.
React. All right, let's go. What's your name?
DJ.
DJ. All right.
DJ.
Nice to meet you, DJ.
Okay, Michael. Same thing. You can ask questions, pick randomly, whatever.
What's your name again?
Joseph.
I'll take Joseph.
Joseph.
Yeah.
Okay, Zach.
Mr. Sandeep.
Sandeep. Is that correct, Sandeep?
IP.
Or IP?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. SANDIP?
Yeah.
Okay, round two. Julian.
You back there. You're in Austin? Austin from Austin?
Austin?
I actually live in Tucson.
Oh,
How many towns?
And I'm sorry, your name?
Destry?
Destry.
DESTRY.
Okay. Marcus.
All right, so we got back end, front end, any project manager types? All right, what's your name?
Zach.
Zach.
Okay, Zach. Okay, Michael.
With a K, actually. So it's my nickname. So.
Okay, cool. My handwriting matured in the 4th grade and it's gone down since then. Okay, Michael. Okay, so Tom. Yeah, and by the way, don't take any offense if you're not picked the last, whatever. This is nobody really knows each other, and this is like just the simplest way to do this. So Zach.
Mr. John, are you on the team? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh,
James.
James.
No.
Okay, so James. Cool. All right, Julian. Who has not been picked yet?
Anyone have prior experience with Ethereum? Yeah.
Yeah.
Talked to you before, what's your name? Jeremy. Okay.
Jeremy? Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, cool. Marcus. And who has not been picked? Raise your hand, please.
What's your skill set?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in design.
Design.
Yeah.
Okay.
Marjan? Okay. Okay. Michael, who's not been picked, who's remaining?
You said you know somebody there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And will you spell your name, please?
RAKESH.
R-A-T-S-H?
ESH, yes.
E-S-H.
KESH.
R-A-T-K-E-S-H.
There is no T.
No T.
Yeah.
R-A-K-E-S-H. Thank you. Sorry about that. All right, Zach.
And the white hat there, sir, what was your name?
Drew.
Drew.
Okay. So who has not been picked yet? Okay. Julian?
I'll take it.
And I'm sorry, will you spell your name again, please?
Satish. S-A-N-P-O-S-H.
S-A-N, I'm sorry.
P-O-S-H.
I'll let you write it in a minute. Sorry about that. All right, so awesome. Is everybody on a team that wants to be on a team? Okay, cool. So there's your teams. We're gonna go to lunch in a minute, and let's see, yeah. So we've got pizza, we got wings coming, and the project over lunch is to come up with a team name. So we'll reconvene at 1 o'clock, and you'll all basically announce your team names. And Jason's going to be talking a little bit about CryptoPal at that point for about 15 minutes or so. Maybe. And then we will change the camera. So at 1 o'clock, we'll come back in here, announce team names, maybe have a little presentation on CryptoPal, and then I'll give you another small parameter for the project in the afternoon. And, again, answer any questions, whatever. And then at 4 o'clock, we'll reconvene here and do presentations, whatever you've got. And we'll have it all wrapped up by 6. And if Marcus has time, and Julian and Jason will actually be voting on a blockchain, or at least scoring on a blockchain construct, and go from there. And by the way, if anybody's watching, we do invite, if you'd like to come for the presentations, we do invite you to be here for the team presentations. You don't have to be part of the developer community to do that. We'll be tweeting that out, whatever. So, anybody have any questions? Basically, go to lunch, come up with a team name, come back at 1 o'clock. That's where we're at this point. So, all right, then enjoy lunch. Hopefully the pizza will be here by the time you walk out of the room. And if not, it'll be here shortly. We've also got wings coming. And yeah, there you go. Yes, Marshall.
Who's the sponsor for today?
This, very good, thank you. So the sponsor for today is Canyon Angels. And we also want to thank Grand Canyon University for letting us use the facility. And hopefully by the end of the day, we'll have Tim Kelly from Canyon Angels joining us. And he can talk a little bit about Canyon Angels and what they do and basically what's available through that group. So thank you for reminding me. Okay, that's it. And let me know if you're interested in looking at these Raspberry Pis. I'll set them up, I'll fire them up. But if nobody's interested, and that's fine. Then they'll just stay dark, so. All right, thank you.